Foul Tarnished. In search of the Elden Ring. Emboldened by the flame of ambition.
Hello, welcome to PlayStation Access. I'm Rob. Joining us today is Rosie.
Hello, everyone.
Who I am very, very jealous of because Rosie has been playing Elden Ring.
Yes, I have been. I've been playing the closed network test.
The Elden Ring beta. Rosie's been playing it. You've been asking loads of questions, and Rosie is going to do her absolute best to answer all of those questions. Having played the game now for how long, Rosie, would you say?
Around, I think it was just over 13 hours.
For goodness sake.
I know, I did a lot. I couldn't put this, all weekend I could not put this lovely game down.
Well, the first question, Rosie, and this is a question that many, many people asked.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it? Everyone wants to know, how hard is the game?
That's a really hard question. Just in the sense of it depends on your skill set.
If you're as good as me,
no,
really easy. It's basically what you're saying.
No, not at all.
Compare it to other From Software titles. So we're talking about the same kind of level of difficulty as a Bloodborne, for instance.
Okay, I'm going to say that if you've played Bloodborne and Demon Souls, you're going to have a fine time with this.
Well, how have you fared against the bosses? That's I feel like a good sort of benchmark for overall difficulty, right? So, were you getting your ass kicked all the time, or did you manage to overcome everything you fought so far?
I managed to overcome all the bosses that I fought. I fought roughly 9 bosses.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so many things to talk about, Rob. But some of them kicked my butt.
Right.
But the beauty of Elden Ring is that, for example, when you first enter the open world area, immediately you see this golden knight on a horse, and called the Tree Sentinel, or Sentinel, sorry. And I just saw this enemy and thought, oh, he's just a really strong enemy. So I slowly approached it cautiously, and then boom, suddenly, big music started playing, health bar popped up. I didn't know what I was doing, and it kicked my ass. I got really frustrated as well because I thought, this is the first not tutorial boss. I was like, I should be able to do this. Am I being bad? Am I being pathetic? It's just defeating me again and again and again. But because this is a really, it's taking more of an open world approach, you can just go away from it, or you can sneak past it and then level up a bit more, and then once you're a bit stronger, you can easily come back and then you get your rightful justice. So I did manage to get them in the end once I learned the game a bit more.
And this, what you said there, sort of leads on to the next question, Rosie, which is, how has the fact that this is open world, which is a first for a From Software title, certainly in this kind of genre of game, how has that affected the gameplay? You mentioned there you being able to sort of choose whether or not you fought a boss and then going away to a different area and leveling up and then coming back later. Does it feel a lot different to play than something like Dark Souls or Bloodborne, which is, while not completely linear, certainly more linear than Elden Ring is?
Yeah, like you're saying, with Bloodborne and Dark Souls and, especially those ones, not so much Demon Souls. I mean, Demon Souls, you can approach different areas at different times.
Yeah.
But with Elden Ring, there are some boss fights which are, pivotal to the story and to your, progression forward. But there's a lot of bosses which, like I said with the Tree Sentinel boss, he can just be there, and then because it's open world, you can literally just sneak around because you've got the space. If you don't like your odds, you can run away from him a bit, and yes, the bosses will definitely come after you and charge at you. They're not letting you go easily. But there was another boss which was a big dragon, flying dragon Agil, I believe it's how you pronounce it, but the flying dragon just came swooping down. I did not expect it, and I knew at that stage I was not going to be ready enough to fight it. So, literally, I just sort of cautiously backed away from it.
Cautiously?
And, yeah, very cautiously. And because I wasn't in a boss zone, let's say as other From Software games, when you have, the fog that means you're in
trapped
the
in it. You're trapped in it, and you either win or you die, basically.
Yeah. So because of that, I was able to just back away slowly and then just make my way away from it. And I could have gone in and charged at the boss, but I decided not to. And because of the open world, I was able to do that. But also, I mean, these games have always got exploration and optional characters and things like that. But when you're exploring the open world, you really do get rewarded for it. Like, it's not as if, let's say in Bloodborne, for example, when you find the Upper Cathedral Ward key, like, you know, that's a whole new area. In Elden Ring, you start off, the first sort of like open world sort of area is Limgrave, and when you're exploring it, through exploring just this big open world, you find caves and tunnels and other little dungeony looking areas, which then provide you with bosses which put you in that set arena. So again, just exploring the open world, you really get rewarded for it. You meet NPCs as well who can help you. I met an NPC called Yura, and when I got invaded, Yura came in and helped me, and I don't know if he would have helped me if I didn't find him in the open world. You can also find materials in this open world. There's so much to do. But it is important to emphasize as well, even though this is open world, it does still have the linear path. So when you rest at a site of grace, you have Grace's guidance, and that is just a little yellow light. It's for like the main sites of grace, not all of them, but you get like a yellow line which basically says this direction is the linear path. If you want to go in and just fight the next boss and do the next area, then head this way and you'll find it.
So it guides you through the story, but you can go off and do other things if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
And another question, also relating to the open world, how big is the open world and how does traversal around it work? We've seen in the gameplay that was revealed last week and in the previous trailers that you've got a mount that you can use.
Yeah, torrents.
Is that available straight away? How does getting around the world work? I've seen the map screen where you can put markers down. So like, what are you doing moment to moment if you're just ignoring the main critical path and exploring the open world? How does it work getting around it?
So when you start off, when you get past the Cave of Knowledge sort of like introduction area and you're in Limgrave, you are literally just like, you know, boom, you're there.
Off you go.
Yeah, there's an NPC who's going to mock you because he's like, haha, you don't have a maiden, you're going to die. Go on, have fun and prove yourself. And then after that, you just, you know, the world is your oyster. I spent the first moments you'll see in my capture, I didn't go towards the big evil tree golden knight looking boss. I was like, okay, he seems like a strong enemy, and I did go off path to be like, oh, what's over here? And I found, you know, some birds which gave me materials, and then I just explored more and found more tutorial things. And but you don't get your steed until you meet a character called Melina, and Melina is your maiden. So at the beginning of the game, everyone's like, oh, you're maidenless, ha ha ha.
Right.
But Melina is the one, she basically is, she's like the doll in Bloodborne.
I see.
So she's the one who, when you meet her, you're able to level up at the Sites of Grace, and she's the one who gives you the spectral steed whistle, and it's a ring that you put on, or it's a whistle. It looks like a ring, but it's in your item inventory anyway, and you can summon your horse at any time. However, I will say you can take your horse into battle. Your horse is called Torrent, but if you take them into battle, when you get attacked, you take a bit of damage, but so does Torrent. And if Torrent dies a certain amount of times, you have to sacrifice a flask of Crimson Tears, which is like your Estus flasks in Dark Souls. You have to sacrifice one of those in order to bring it back to life.
I see.
So if you're in a tight situation, let's say you've only got one of these Crimson Tears left, then do you want to spend it bringing your horse back, or do you want to use it on yourself to heal yourself up a bit? And also, Torrent's really good at platforming, so you can jump as well. So there's a lot of moments where if I wanted to try and get past something, I'm not used to jumping in From Software games because I've only played the beginning of Sekiro, but I saw like a spirit of another player jumping up some rocks to the left, and I thought, that's a very good idea. So then I jumped up there, got a bow and arrow, and then started like sniping from up there. And you do take fall damage as well. So if you fall from a great height, then yes, you're going to take damage, but Torrent can jump and also double jump. So if you want to get down, it might be a good idea to summon Torrent and then jump off and then double jump again just to sort of soften the blow of when you land.
Pro tip there, Rosie, it sounds like.
Pro tip.
But the next question, you mentioned it a little bit already. What can you tell us about the dungeons that you find as you explore the world? You mentioned little caves and other things, but we also saw in the big 20-minute gameplay demo that was released last week, you can find massive castles as well.
Yes.
And these look, I guess, a bit more like what you would expect from a typical non-open world From Software title. Is that an accurate description of the dungeons? Are they like little nuggets of classic From Software gameplay?
Yeah, so they're like, think of them as the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne. So they are completely optional. At least I'm pretty sure they're completely optional. So you can find them just from exploring the world. Sometimes you find statues, and if you examine the statue, you'll get like a little blue wave from the statue being like, there's something down there, you might want to have a look. And then you found an entrance to a cave or some tunnels or something like that, or some catacombs. But you go in them, and they kind of provide you just with some little challenges. There was one I went into, and there were fire traps all over the place, so I had to time my running to make sure I didn't burn to a crisp. There were little sort of like gargoyle enemies, and if they get a hold of you, they're quick and they're deadly. But once you figure out, and also they love to hide and then drop from the ceilings and everything. But either way, when you're going through these little areas, there's inevitably a boss at the end, and these are the type of boss fights where you have like a golden mist door in front of them, which is very typical from these type of games. But they're the kinds of bosses, rather than, the open world ones where you encounter them and you can run away. These ones, if you want to, that is. These ones are, you're in the area, you're fighting this boss. Like, it's either you win or they win. And then if you die, you get sent back to the beginning of the little catacomb that you've been exploring, and then you've got to do it again.
That's interesting. I mean, this isn't a question that community has asked, but I've just thought of it now. So is that what happens when you die then? You just get sent back to the beginning of... What happens if you die in the open world?
That's a very good question. So, when you die in the open world, you get teleported back to the last site of grace that you rested at.
Right.
So, full on, not just turn it on, you have to fully rest there. But because it's an open world, and sometimes, there are some pretty tough surprise bosses out there, you also have, dotted around the world, they're called Stake of Marika, or Marika, and they're little statues. So if you die on let's say when I was fighting the dragon, I died on that boss a couple of times, but the Stake of Marika was closer than the Site of Grace. So I had the option. They were like, do you want to spawn at the Site of Grace or the Stake of Marika that is nearby and that you've recently seen? So, then I spawned back there, and boom, I was right in front of the boss fight again, and I could go in and try again.
Sounds good. How does multiplayer work, Rosie? How much experience have you had of multiplayer so far?
There's so many multiplayer options. So in the open world, you find another little statue, which are basically summoning pools. So you've got some items which you can leave sort of a sign, and that sign will be placed at the nearest summoning pool. Whereas you also then have other items which you can drop in the open world, someone can find them, and then they can summon you. You've got gold items, which mean that you're a cooperator.
Right.
Red items, which means that you want to fight competitively, which is great. And then you've also then got bloody fingers, which means you want to invade. And if you are an invader, you are a bloody finger in the host's world.
Bloody fingers.
Bloody finger. But what I really like as well is that I'm not that well diverse in the PvP element from all these kind of games. But I really like how there is the competitive option. So if you want to have a fight, it's not just a case of, you invade someone's world. You can actually put down red signs and say, hey, I want to competitively fight. Does anyone want to come give me a go?
Okay, so if you want to do some PvP, there's like a cool option for PvP likers to engage in that without having to bother anybody who just wants to get on with the game, I guess. Yeah,
pretty much. So I tried really hard to pick a fight with someone. I was like, come on, someone, come fight me. Let's have a great time. We'll just fair play to whoever wins. And no one wanted to fight me, Rob. And I was really sad.
You just have to wait until more people are on the game. I'll come fight you, Rosie.
Yeah, you should come fight me. Or we could also go cooperatively.
We could,
yeah. And you also have, so you can have up to, I believe, at least in the closed network test, you can have up to 4 people in your world in total. So I believe that's including yourself. And there is an item called Taunter's Tongue, which basically invites up to 2 bloody fingers or invaders to invade your world. But because up to 2 of them can invade your world, you can only summon 1 person to help. And then there are also these rings which you can put on. So let's say, for example, the blue cipher ring I started wearing when I realized what it did, because it meant if anyone else got invaded, I would automatically be called, and they were calling for help, I would automatically be called and then summoned to their world so I could help them out. So the multiplayer is like, it's a really exciting, I'm really looking forward to fully experiencing the multiplayer, because there's just loads of options. It looks like, I mean, when I played it, there were loads of summoning signs during the end of my session. Like, everyone wanted to try and help each other, but I think at that point, people were also like, no, I can do this myself. So, you know, I was like, there's no reason to summon someone to help me. There's nothing they can help me with.
I'm too good at the game. I don't need anybody's help.
But you can also, just one more, like, there's so many items, but just one more, there's something called like a fur calling finger remedy, and basically if you use that, you can see summoning signs.
Okay.
So, you know, if you're struggling on a boss and you want to maybe look for some summoning signs which haven't necessarily appeared, then that will allow you to see not only cooperative ones, but the competitive ones as well.
Cool. And just a general question about combat then. What's the combat like? You already said it's a bit more sort of slow and deliberate, maybe like a Demon Souls or a Dark Souls. So is it like sword, shield, parrying, blocking, that kind of thing? What does it feel like to fight?
So this is also kind of similar to which class you pick. So for this network test, we had a choice of 5 classes. I went for the Bloody Wolf because I thought they seemed more similar to what I've done with Demon Souls and Dark Souls in the sense of they start off more like a soldier, they've got a shield, and they had the Bastard Sword. And then I learned magic, you know, when I sort of got a bit stronger in my sword skills.
Yeah.
So for me, the fighting was, or the combat was, you know, very much like shield up, trying to get some good parries, using...
So can you do parries?
Yes. So I could do parries because it was one of my skills, but also there's something they've introduced called Ashes of War. And when you've got, so let's say I've got my sword, you know how you can have your shield up and then you can also go two-handed?
Yeah.
When you're, well, at least in my situation, when I went two-handed with my sword, my Ashes ability was available to use, and they're basically, you apply them to your weapon, and rather than pressing L2 to parry, because I had one-handed on my sword and my shield up, now I had both hands on, I could do an ability, and that could either be, you know, a piercing attack, or I could summon magic swords to charge or aim at enemies and fire at them when they came in, or at least came closer to me. So there are loads of, you know, things you can experiment with, things you could play around with. I went for the magical little swords around me for a bit just because I thought I don't have a lot of magic, so maybe that will help me with some enemies. Also as well, you can sneak up on enemies, which means you can stab them in the back easily. You can, when you time your parries, you've got criticals. When you stun enemy, or like big enemies, you know, when they, like in Bloodborne, when they go chuking, you hear that sound, and then when you hear that sound in Elden Ring, there are also some enemies which have like an orange sort of glow to them, and that basically means like this is where the critical point is. So if you're fighting a boss, or I was fighting some trolls and I stunned them, so they went down to the floor, one of their eyes was glowing orange, so I stabbed it in the eye, and then that was my critical shot.
Nice.
So it's at least for me anyway, the combat was still very much like Dark Souls and Demon Souls. But also, if you want to stun some enemies as well, you can jump and attack. And in some situations, that will stun enemies or give them good damage. So, and I don't mean jump as in like you fall and you just fall and land. You can actually, if you're in a fight, full on jump yourself and then come back down with your giant sword.
And we saw in the gameplay demo last week, you have an ability to summon spirits almost to help you out in battle. Have you had any experience with that?
Yes, yes, that's a very good point to make. So you can summon in-game spirits, and I use them a lot actually when I started getting to know them. You summon them when there's a monument icon which appears, and the monument icon is going to be to the left of your screen. When that's there, that means you can summon spirits, and I've summoned a pack of 3 wolves. I've summoned 5 little baby warriors, let's say.
Babies.
I had one that did sorcery, and then I had one which I was really happy to find, and he was like a full-on, quite a strong knight. So, for example, when I fought the dragon, I believe I used my 5 not-so-strong warriors, because I thought, look, there's 5 of them, the dragon's going to want to try and attack all of them, and their focus is basically going to be on those 5, so I can maybe go in and get its legs some more. And then where there was a moment when I was in Stormvale Castle, and I thought, right, there's a lot of enemies over here. Let me get my 3 wolves so they can charge in and we'll fight them all together. And with some boss fights, I summoned my really strong knight, but he used most of my FP. And
What's FP?
so FP, sorry, is like your magic gauge. So you have your health bar, which is red, then your FP gauge, which is like using magic, and then your stamina, which is green. And you can refill your FP using Flask of, I have to say this now, Cerulean Tears, or Cerulean Tears.
Cerulean, I reckon.
Cerulean Tears, that sounds like the right one. So yeah, using these summons does cost you, let's just say magic, but they can be incredibly helpful in some situations.
You mentioned this a bit earlier as well, but how do Sites of Graces work? Sites of Grace, how do they work?
So they do so many things. So think of them as like your bonfires in Dark Souls and all that stuff. So you go there and you rest. When you rest at them, that means that they're then, if you look on your map, they are an area that you can fast travel to. Mm-hmm. They're where you can level up there, which is what you can do once you get Melina. You can swap your flask amount, which means you have 2 types of flasks. Like I said, you've got ones which revive HP and ones which revive FP. And you can, let's say you can have 2 and 2, for example. Or with my character, because I wasn't using magic so much, at first I just full on went with 4 health, please. I was just like, I want 4 flasks which help me with my health. Yeah. And then once I started learning a bit of magic on my own and using some incantations as well, I was like, okay, let's now swap it so I have 3 health flasks and then let's just say 1 magic flask. What I should probably say as well, you level up with runes, and runes you get from defeating enemies.
Right. Can you only level up at a Site of Grace?
Yes. So you can only level up at Sites of Grace. Sites of Grace also allow you to memorize your magic and equip them to what you want at the time. Yeah. They allow you to apply your Ashes of War. Oh gosh, what else do they do?
Do they respawn all the enemies?
Yes, they do. Not all enemies though. So they respawn most of the enemies, but there was one moment where, they can also pass time. Passing time, which is, so this has got like a day and night cycle to it. But the reason I got so excited was because I got very excited about this, but there was a bridge which, when I came across, it was near a Site of Grace, but I came across it and there was this black knight on a black horse on it, and I'd never seen it before, and I thought, this is going to be a strong enemy, and yes, he was very strong. Right. And then when I fought him again, it was still night, but then when it was daytime, he wasn't there. So then I went back to the Site of Grace, let time pass by until it was evening, and then he appeared again. So I think that he was like an evening-only enemy.
Nocturnal enemy.
A nocturnal enemy.
Yes.
He slept in the daytime. But either way, so I used the Site of Grace to rest there and pass time. And they can do so many things. They can't level up your... You need a smithing table to, level up your weapons, and...
That's my next question, Rosie.
Ooh!
How do you upgrade weapons and armour?
Well, there you go. So you upgrade weapons from going to a smithing station. I only came across one, which was by the first merchant you meet, Kale, and you need, I think they were called, smithing stones, so you need runes and smithing stones, certain items in order to level them up. So I focused mainly on my bastard sword because it was pretty much it was my loyal companion. Yes. And I got that all the way up to +3, which was the maximum amount that smithing stone would allow me to upgrade that weapon. Right. And armor, sadly, I didn't come across any moments where I could in the small section that I played. But the game did say you'll come across blacksmiths and other things which can advance your upgrades and leveling up stuff.
And how does the character progression work then? You said you could level up at Sites of Grace. Is it a similar situation to previous From Software titles where you've got a number of, what did you say they were? You don't have blood vials, you have...
So you upgrade using runes, and runes, you get the little counter on the bottom right, this is another thing I really liked. When you're playing the game, your HUD menu isn't there as you're running around, but if you press triangle, then you can easily see everything in your HUD. So if you wanted to see how many runes you have, if you just press triangle, it will pop up in the bottom right and you can see how many you've got. So that's what you use to level yourself up. You can do all your standard things. You know, you've got your stamp, your endurance, your intelligence, mind, vigor, or however you say it, your faith, your arcane. You've got all of that fun stuff that you can level up. And yeah, you just keep on getting those runes, going to a site of grace and leveling up there. And then of course, if you die, then you need to pick them up again where you just
Sure.
died.
Yeah. And the final question, Rosie, what one thing has surprised you most during your time with Elden Ring?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I just loved my entire experience of what I've played of it, but I think maybe the main thing, how well the open worldness worked in it.
The open worldness.
The open worldness.
Yeah.
So literally, I spent by the time I finished the closed network test, I did it around the 10-hour mark. So that was 10 hours of me purely just running around, looking at everything, discovering things, finding a cave. That led me to this Church of Dragon Communion. And then, whoa, I defeated the dragon. I got an item. I can use it as the Dragon Communion. What? So I did that and I got an awesome item. But also, I knew that if I did want to progress, I knew exactly where to go. I knew that the Grace's guidance was saying, head this way. But, there's I think I'm surprised by how much there was to do.
Okay.
And even when I was running around, there was a character called Bok who I met, and I was just running around. I heard this voice calling for help, and I didn't know where he was, and I was just like, but it turns out he was transformed into a tree, which I only found by chance. I was like, oh my god, I was looking for him from listening to where his voice was in the direction, and there's just so many NPCs, so many optional bosses you can fight, which are all really fun. You find out their weakness, you find out how to tackle them, and they can definitely pack a punch. There's such a variety in areas. One moment I'm in the mining tunnels and fighting these rock-like creatures, and then I'm fighting a big pumpkin head man.
Right.
And I loved his pumpkin head, and I wore it a lot. And I think I just was really surprised by how much I enjoyed exploring the world, riding on Torrent, just looking at the map, and just trying to see as much as I could and be loving every minute of it.
I think, Rosie, I am even more jealous now after listening to you talk about it than I was before we started this video. That is an exhaustive list, I think. I hope we've managed to answer as many questions as possible. Thank you very much, Rosie, for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for letting me just, blurt my love and how much I enjoyed in this game. I feel as if there's so much more I could talk about, because I got to experience so much. So I just loved it, and I hope that I answered your questions as well as possible, whilst also being very excited to talk about Elden Ring, because I love it and it's great.
Well, we're going to have more Elden Ring on the channel this week, so please stay tuned. Give this video a like if you found it helpful. Don't forget to click that notification bell if you haven't already done so, and subscribe so you don't miss anything from the world of PlayStation.
PlayStation